Good afternoon. It's Craig again from ICT US. Today we're going to go over some of the maintenance steps and things you should look for when servicing your PA7 bill acceptors. So, starting off, have your unit here. Quick thing to check would be if, let's put this down a little bit. So, all of the new PA7s, as well as a lot of the older ones, if they're not too old, are going to have these anti-phishing teeth, metal anti-phishing teeth. These are for anti-stringing also. So if someone gets some string or something to go through the bill path to try and get bills out, since these are metal, it's usually going to shred whatever people are trying to use to get up in there. If your PA7 is old enough that it does not have these teeth, they can still be added. We sell the teeth as well as the two screws that go in here for installation. If you have an older unit and that does not have these teeth, you're probably not going to have the two holes needed for installation either. How we do that and address that here is you would insert your new teeth into the box and use it as a template, and then using a standard pointed tip soldering iron, just make two little holes using those screw holes as templates, as I mentioned, and then using the screws, it'll make their own threads and therefore hold it in securely. If any of those teeth are bent out forward, such as a failed stringing attempt or whatnot, those teeth are going to impact the bottom of your stacker cap. Now, if you're using a really old PA7, your stacker cap is probably going to be gray. We'll go over the differences between these two versions in a moment. Another thing with your unit itself is most people know about the LED tray that comes out, and you would just like wipe this down with warm soapy water and just have your rag damp. You want to avoid using any harsh chemicals such as isopropyl alcohol, any of those harsh solvent type cleaners, because it may adversely affect and react with the plastic and the various glues that are used in these units. It doesn't really affect the PA7 much, but I know for the older P70 stackerless units that it will react with the glue in the lens and permanently cloud or discolor the optic window. So those will need to be replaced, as the plastic will never go clear again and your sensor values and calibrations will always be skewed. So making sure that that's clean, a lot of people forget that there's another set of optics on the other side of this, so on the upper. It is a bit harder to get to, but if you simply remove, the 4 screws on the bezel and remove that, that gives you like full access to this whole LED sensor housing that then you can take your rag and wipe along there, coming from the other side, make sure it's thoroughly cleaned. Cleaning your belts also. That can be done simply with making a 12-volt power harness. This one was just off a main harness from a 12-volt unit that I can plug into our BT5, our a bill acceptor tester. It provides voltage, protocols, etc. So plugging this in directly straight to 12 volts, my line split here has a 12 volt in the ground just coming off that main harness. And to clean your belts, you would simply remove your main board. I've already gone through and undid all the screws to save some time here. Set that off to the side. So then you're left open with your motor wires, your flat cable, your hook sensor wire, and your stacker motor wire. So applying your 12 volts to your upper wires here, this is your drive motor. This is what runs your belts. So applying voltage to this will have them run and allowing you to clean your belts with the rag. And for cleaning belts, you can use alcohol. It's actually recommended for your belts, as long as you don't do it too often, because as you or may not know, alcohol will dry out rubber, which our belts are rubber. But if you're just doing it, every now and then as preventative maintenance, usually once or twice a month, isn't going to cause any damage. So applying this just to 12 volt power will run the motors. Just take some of your alcohol. Hold that on the belts. I usually go back and forth along. The side. And then remember about the lower belts also. These are the ones that actually touch the bills the most. So be sure to go over those a bit better. Just same like back and forth on the belt. On these lower ones, if you are using an older PA7, they may strip where it has a little bit of like that. So these motors are stripped. You can see the belt will catch. It sounds like it's moving, but it's not. That's actually normal for a lot of these older PA7s. These motors even after cleaning, if they do strip, they're fairly close to have just failing on their own, and that would be a good time to go through and change out your motors. When you do change motors, unless it's, you know, caused from vandalism or outside influence, if you have to change one of your motors, we generally recommend changing both of them at the same time, just so you know that when the one motor was changed, the other one was addressed also. If one failed prematurely, the other one is probably close to failing around the same time. There's a rough general lifespan on these motors, definitely longer than like 3 years or so. So I know some of these have been out in the field since 2003 and still haven't had motors fail, but you're almost on borrowed time at that point. So if your motors sound like they're running but your belts aren't moving, the internal gears of the motor itself have probably finally stripped out, and you would have to replace your motor module. But you can see that came off of the belts. I started with a cleaner side of this rag, and all this came off of the belts. So just cleaning them with alcohol usually is good enough. The entire time that I've been here in the last 6-7 years, I've personally only had to replace the drive belts on maybe 4 occasions or so, and that was due to actual vandalism where the belts were cut or the side just started to fray out. Outside damage, but they haven't been needed to be replaced just from use, even after maybe 10 years. So you're more than welcome to change them. I know a lot of places, part of their third-party service, they'll just go ahead and change the belts and bundle it in with their labor charges. But through us, we don't do that unless it's absolutely necessary. We'll just clean them and save some money for the customers. Upgrading older PA7s, such as PA7A units that did not have a USB port. They look exactly the same as the normal PA7, except for the internal part. So I have that taken out already for you here to demonstrate. So if you notice here, the older PA7s and PA7As used the same stacker cap as a 6 series unit, such as an A6, V6, S6, or N6. On the PA7s, however, they're no longer the best style of stacker cap. So we've gone ahead and changed this in the production. So if you are doing maintenance on your own units, it's recommended to change this out when you change your motors. The actual arms themselves should be the same. It's just the stacker cap has been improved. The old style, the gray one here, is just made with standard ABS plastic, compared to the newer black style. It is black, it's not gray. The lighting in here isn't that great, but this style does have the rubber grips so it helps to move the bills along easier into the cash box. And instead of being 100% ABS, it's this one is constructed with 80% ABS and 20% glass fiber, which reinforces the internal strength of this quite a lot. It's almost like a version of carbon fiber. If you can think of it in that aspect, it's instead of having carbon fiber threads, we have glass threads. So that significantly improves the durability and the strength of these stacker caps. As I mentioned earlier, the anti-stringing teeth, if they're bent out, they'll impact the bottom of these caps. And on the newer black style, it won't break the caps, but it will gouge out, score marks where those teeth are hitting, compared to the older style caps where they'll just shatter and probably break along the bottom half here, which isn't ideal. So you would want to change those out. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. So you take off the 2 nylon retaining washers. Depending on your model, you may have one or both of these secured with a black Phillips screw. We're going to be replacing those both. So by the time you're done with this, you shouldn't have any more of these screws holding in your stacker assembly, but more so the new style hex bolts that I will go over in a moment. So as I mentioned earlier, the arms stay the same, but you'll want to change the stacker cap. So there's going to be your nylon clips on the bottom of this. Just go ahead and remove these from the stacker cap. Get your replacement stacker cap. And the way these arms go in, the small hole here is always going to go into the post next to this little block. So the small hole next to the little block. Do it for the other side too. Small hole next to the block. And then be sure to put your nylon snap rings back into place. You don't need to put it on both sides. This side is pretty much held in by this block, but on the backs, you do want to make sure that you put them back on such. If you were changing your motors, this is where you would change motors. These 2 screws here are removed, which will allow you to pull out the motor module. We're not going to be covering that in this video specifically, but we'll go over that in a different video at a different date. So once your motors and everything are back in there, you want to get your stacker cap and your arms. You can see that on one side it's flat, the other side is kind of rounded a bit. The rounded side will go towards your fins. Those fins are the hook sensor teeth, to be sure people aren't trying to fish stuff out during a sale. Alright, put your two nylon clip washers on the front. Now, I mentioned we're no longer going to be using the small Phillips screws. We now have a kit that comes with the belt axle, the belt roller that guides the belt itself, and then the nylon washer that retains everything from the outside. We sell this just as the part number PA7 axle kit. It's roughly a couple of dollars or so. It changes at various points in the year, just based on demand and such. But you'll need one of these kits per side that you removed a black Phillips screw from. This new set also takes up a bit of the excess belt slack. As you can see, it's kind of lots of slack. On the older units, you will have 118 MXL as your belt size. On the newer units, it's actually 119. So you can still use 118 on these older units and do the retrofit that we're doing here with the belt axles and the rollers. But your belts are going to be kind of tight, which is okay. It won't cause any other damage or whatnot. It may just like squeak a little bit after it finishes taking the bill. But it's just tension. It's not going to cause any damage or something to really be worried about. These hex posts are 9mm, so I just have a hand driver. You can tighten these too tight, so I have just an unwritten rule: only use 2 fingers when you're tightening these. If they're over tight, it will bind on those stacker arms and make you think that you have a stacker motor problem, but in reality your motor is fine, it's just being bound up from a different location, such as these posts. Okay, get that side on there for you and show you. So you'll get the post on there with the black roller, and then secured all from the outside with a nylon clip ring. Let's see if we can do the other side for you, actually on camera. Two-finger tight. It may be easier if you undo your belt from your motor and loop that around there, put your nylon ring on there, and then afterwards come back and loop up on your motor again. So having both sides secured on the posts and not those black Phillips screws anymore, you can see the tension is much more tighter now. These are using the older 118 belts, so that's how tight they're going to be. As I mentioned, it's fine. It just might squeak as it comes to a stop once it's done receiving a bill. Next, if you have an older PA7, you will probably be missing the green belt guides. Now, these have a left and a right. They're roughly about $2.30 for the set. If a unit comes in for repair and they don't have these, they are included as part of the labor charge. Any units that come in under warranty that don't have these clips we'll have a discussion. There shouldn't be a reason why a unit is brand new and doesn't have these on there unless they were removed by someone. Doesn't have to be you, but they should be there. So if they're not there, you'll want to put them there. They basically keep the belts from skipping off this side, like how you're able to have belts like slip off like that easily. So what these do is acts like a little guide for your belt at the bottom of your hook assembly. Now these do have a left and a right. And the way you tell is you want to have your metal side facing towards the red wheel. You can see it just snaps into place like that. And there you go. The two green belt retainers in there, along with your belt axles, will make sure all your belt tensions are proper and not slip your belts off the side. That's been an issue in the past. That's about it for PA7. If there's any concerns, questions, anything that you would like to have additional help on, feel free to leave a comment here or contact our office, and we'll be happy to provide further assistance.